A bigger chunk of money is going to Russell Wilson with the Seattle Seahawks. And, it's died down this year. Last year, it was clear that Russell was agitated after he went 12-4 and one and done. The 2021 season, he was injured. He just doesn't seem as anxious as he was a year ago.
Right.
And that's reduced this sense that he's looking for a way out. So flip it around. Yesterday, Pete Carroll, coach of the team, talking to reporters, addressing the question of whether or not Pete Carroll will be trading Russell Wilson, but also as part of this package, Russell Wilson from earlier in the week talking about his current desire to stay with the Seattle Seahawks.
I'm from Richmond. I know what you mean. I got people hitting me up every day, but all my friends and all that from East Coast. But Seattle's the place that I'm at right now, and I love it, and it's great, man.
Have you received any offers or inquiries from other teams on possibly trading Russell Wilson?
At this time of year, we're there's conversations about everybody. We talk about everybody, and that's commonplace for us to have conversations with teams about all of the players, particularly marquee players, and that's not changed. It's been the same every year we've been here, so it's the same as it's been. We have no intention of making any move there, but the conversations, John has to feel those he always has, but nothing specific to that.
We have no intent to trade Percy Harvin. That was 9 years ago. Rick Spielman said that about the receiver who days later was traded to the Seattle Seahawks. So when you say no intention, I'm sorry, that's a signal because a guy's either untouchable or he isn't. And if he's untouchable, you don't say we have no intention. You say we're not. Not no intention. We're not. We have no intention, but if someone makes us an offer we can't refuse, we'll take it. No, we're not. You're not going to hear no intention from the Bengals about Joe Burrow. You're not going to hear no intention from the Chargers about Justin Herbert. You're not going to hear no intention from the Chiefs about Patrick Mahomes. That is a signal to someone out there. If you want to try to blow us away, go ahead and do it. And now, Russell's still got no trade clause, but that's a signal from Pete Carroll. He's been around long enough to know what that means and how that should be received by the other 31 teams.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. It does seem like chatter has died down, just as far as things that, you and I hear through people through the NFL. I don't hear a lot about, Russell Wilson and, him trying to make a move right now. I don't. It seems like it's died down. I don't know how to feel about the situation a little bit. I'm a little bit more there's a few things that go through my mind here, Mike. First off, we know they're not afraid to make moves up in Seattle. And we also know, right, a few years ago when the Cleveland Browns had the number 1 pick, that Seattle called Cleveland and said, we'll give you Russell Wilson. We want the number 1 pick. And they were going to take Josh Allen. That's what they wanted to do. They're not afraid to do those things. Jamal Adams, Dwayne Brown, whatever. They've made aggressive moves. Here we are with this team. That's where, that's where I look at it sometimes and I go, wait, it seems like Russ wants out of there. It has seemed like that for the last 2 years, like you've discussed. And then I think the other thing I look at, too, with Seattle is just where are they as a team right now? I understand you might want to keep Russ. I get that. He's one of the best quarterbacks in football. But at the same time, damn, there's a lot of holes up in Seattle. There really is. And if I put myself in their shoes, too, at times, I sit here and go, well, if you got a guy that's not necessarily that happy about being there, and if you feel that way, he doesn't have the longest contract. He's going to be able to get out of there soon or be a free agent. Well, if I'm them, I would be thinking about it. Wait, we could rebuild our team. We could get 3 first-round picks and, maybe some other things and assets and then start another run here if we're the Seattle Seahawks. And that's where, I find it interesting. But maybe Pete Carroll also looks at it and goes, well, I'm getting up there. I might not be here long enough, to bear the fruits of the trade and everything and take advantage of that 5 or 6 years from now. So there's a lot of things that make me feel a lot of different ways, and I don't have a feel for how this thing's going to go yet.
Well, first of all, Russell Wilson is never going to come out and say, I want out. We know that.
That's right.
But there was a greater sense of agitation last year. When they went 12-4, they lost in the first round of the playoffs at home. He was dismayed. He was disgruntled. He was miserable sitting next to Roger Goodell at Super Bowl 55. That was funny. That was one of the funny images coming out of the Super Bowl. It was obvious he was miserable. And he was miserable because he was watching Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes down on the field, and he's farther and farther removed from the last time he was on the field in a Super Bowl. So we saw his appearance on Dan Patrick last year, where he was shockingly candid about his concerns. And then that culminates in his agent saying, my client doesn't want to be traded. But if he were to be traded, he would accept a trade to the Bears, the Raiders, the Saints, or the Cowboys.
That's the weirdest
that
thing
was
ever.
unprecedented. That was unprecedented.
I never heard anything. Right, I agree.
Now, but I think the reason the chatter isn't there now, Chris, is because there hasn't been the noise from Russell the way that there was last year. And maybe it's because he's content, or maybe it's because he knows that Pete Carroll's going to come out and say we have no intent to trade Russell Wilson as the signal for people to start calling. I mean, because from the Seahawks' perspective, he's got 2 years left under contract. Traditionally, he gets a new deal when he's in the last year of his current contract, when he's entering that last year. Remember, it was 3 years ago they did the big thing about, he's got to have a new deal in place by the start of offseason workouts. And the Seahawks made him one of the highest paid players in football right before the start of offseason workouts. So where he went on Jimmy Fallon, and you're right, well, what's Jimmy Fallon doing asking football questions? That was fed to him by Russell. It
was all
Wilson.
a setup.
So you may be the highest. You may be the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. Like Jimmy Fallon cares
Nobody
about that.
even talked about that.
Yeah. We just know he doesn't. And it wasn't a talking point. It just came out of left field when he's on this, this late night show. So they know that's coming next year. I think from Seattle's perspective, they have to ask themselves, what do we get now versus what do we get next year? Because we think next year when he starts jostling to be a $50 million a year guy, we're going to say no, and that's when it's going to come to a head.
Right.
So do we get more now? Are we willing to forego one more season with Russ and get more now than what we would get next year? I think that's the analysis the Seahawks are going to have to engage in.
I don't disagree with you. It makes sense. It does. Yeah. I think, again, if it seems like now's the time to make the move if you're going to, because they're going to lose some leverage, to your point, after next season's over. And then, the contract negotiations, everything that goes in with that. And then if he just wants to say, fine, I'll just play the last year and become a free agent or do that, that's going to put, of course, pressure on the situation and hurt their stance as far as having power and trade opportunities as well. So I'm with you. And this is one I'm certainly going to keep my eye on a little bit. I haven't heard much about it lately, though. I don't know if you have either. I just, this is a subject that, it just kind of comes out of nowhere at times with Russell Wilson, but definitely a little bit of a tricky situation. And listen, I can see Russell Wilson, why he'd want to get out of there. I get that. I think the current status of the team is a little bit like on the fence. It could go either way. As we said, there's a lot of issues, secondary issues, corner issues, not a lot of big difference makers on the front line on defense. We know the offensive line needs some rebuilding. Running back, Rashad Penny showed up at the end of the year, but can he be depended on? I mean, it's all across the board there, let alone you and I had a lot of games last year where we came away going, man, the Seattle offense, I mean, Russell said he wanted to be all about him, and it's still the same Seattle offense we watched for the last 8 years. It was no different. And that's where I just look at it and go, well, why would Russell be happier this year than last year? That's where I don't understand it. I just feel like it's one of those things that's kind of just waiting in the wings, and it's just going to smack us in the face 2 weeks down the road here, and we're going to hear all about it, and it's all going to come, to some sort of a head, or at least something's going to happen.
And now's the time to send that message when everyone is in town, when everyone is together. This is where deals get done, whether it's between teams and prospective free agents, although there isn't as much blatant tampering as there used to be because of the 2-day window when the negotiations are allowed to happen. But if there is a trade to be had, this is what happens. When everyone's in town together, and this is very low tech, but it's very human nature, you don't have to be the one who makes the phone call to Pete Carroll or John Schneider and initiate the conversation. Because if you do that, you're operating from a position of weakness. If you want Russell Wilson and you call them first, then you're giving up some power. And if they want to move Russell Wilson and they should actually call you, they give up the power. But when they're out, at St. Elmo's or Prime or wherever,
having a beer
and
or
drinking
whatever,
a few beers and You know, it just kind of spontaneously happens when you run into somebody. And it's not as stark as ringing them up on the phone and bringing up the topic. So there's a way to ease into the conversation. And that can be very valuable because then neither side is operating out of that position of weakness, and you can work your way toward a fair outcome. And that's why it's valuable to have everyone in the same place at the same time at the scouting combine, because these deals can happen without the impediments of the usual. Someone's got to be the first one to make a move. And so now's the time. And anyone who was paying attention yesterday, what Pete had to say, if they saw Pete or Schneider anywhere last night and they're interested in Russ, now's the time to casually spark up that conversation and see where it goes.
No doubt. And you know, the conversation is not going to go anywhere. You know, again, I think you laid it out perfectly. Russell's always been cryptic. We're never going to hear the full truth from him. He's going to say what he needs to say in front of the microphone, and then he's going to release messages, you know, other ways behind the scenes. And then the absolute, aggressive nature, putting themselves out there of the Washington Commanders, and then the fact that he lived and grew up not far from there, I just feel like this conversation ain't going anywhere. Washington has put themselves out there that they want a quarterback, and they're a player in the game. They really have. Ron Rivera's not hiding from it. Nobody, I mean, it's you just hear it out loud here. They're going for a quarterback. They want somebody new. They need that guy to push their team over the edge. And that's where, you know, one I'm going to continue to look at. And I don't know if that's a big enough market for a guy like Russell Wilson and Sierra. Do they care either way? But there's certainly some pieces in place there that I would like if I was a guy like Russell Wilson.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.